Welcome to this painting tutorial. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to this video. In this video I will be painting Elucia Vhane from the Kill Team Rogue Trader expansion set. This character is easy to paint and very straightforward, so you won't have a very difficult time painting her. She's my favorite character of the set and I decided to make a video about how to paint her. If you like this video, please like the video, comment on it and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any uploads. Let's get started. I'm going to start by priming the model, and for that I'm going to use Vallejo Surface Primer Gray through an airbrush. You can use any other primer that you like. I would recommend using this one because it goes very thin and very nice in the model. But you can use any other light colored primer that you like. I would recommend either white or light gray. I'm going to start by painting the skin. For that I'm going to use Bugman's Glow, and with this color I'm going to paint all of the areas that are skin. There aren't very many, but this is the deepest, most hardest to reach detail on the miniature, and we typically start from the inside out when we're painting a model, so we don't paint over those colors with other colors that we don't want to. So I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to use slightly thinner paint than normal, and this means that we need to apply more layers, but if you do this you will preserve a lot more detail, and on characters and miniatures that you really care about, you should try to use thinner paint and do multiple coats, let them dry and apply a different coat after it's dry. That way you preserve detail and the model looks good. Once it's done, I'm going to move on to the corset, and for that I'm going to use Screamer Pink. And with this color I'm going to paint the corset and all of the little pieces of cloth that are hanging around it. I'm basing myself on the artwork that comes in the box set, so I'm trying to make the closest color scheme to the artwork on the box. If you want to paint it any differently, you can. And always remember to thin down your paints, at least to give it 2 coats so that it reaches full opacity and preserves detail. Be careful not to paint any of the other details that we've already painted. For the skirt, I'm going to use Mephiston Red, and this is the same process as the other steps. Just thin down the paint and use it liberally around the area without using very thick paint. And for most of these steps I'm using a small layer brush. I'm really not using any other brush. You can if you want to paint a little bit faster, but I'm trying to take my time and use a small layer brush just to paint very neatly around the details and not make any mistakes. Next I'm going to paint the white. For that I'm going to use Celestra Gray, and this is going to go over all of the places that you want to be white. The sleeves, the veil on the face, any ribbons or tyings on the corset, you can paint it with this color. And the same as the other 2 colors that we painted so far, we need to use thin paint and paint very carefully not to paint in other areas. Light color like gray is going to cover very well over our primer, but if you paint over any other areas, it's important to be patient and apply thin layers, because if you don't, this is very prone to leave very thick layers of paint and produce crumbs and brush marks and stuff like that. Once that's done, I'm going to move on to painting the brown with Rhinox hide. This is going to go over all of the areas that you want to be leather, or straps, leather straps, or pieces of wood, or anything like that. I also painted the hair of Elucia Vhane as well. For these details, I would advise using a small layer brush or anything similar, so that you can paint these small details without painting in other areas. And also thin down the paint so it flows easily and you can apply it easily. And also bracing your hands together will make you have a steadier control of the brush. Once that's done, I'm going to continue with Vallejo model color black, or you can use Abaddon black if you want, and this is going to go on mainly the boots, but any other details that you want to be black on the character itself, you can use this color as well. Next, once I'm done with all of the normal colors, I'm going to move on to the metallics. For that, I'm going to use Leadbelcher, and with this color I'm going to paint all of the little details that are going to be silver. This is mainly just the skulls on the boots, on the top of the hat, the Aquila, and the gun. There's not a lot of silver details on this model. And yeah, that's it. Just try to apply thin down paint so it doesn't cover the detail, and be very careful not to paint on other places. Next, I'm going to do the brass. For that, I'm going to start with Balthasar Gold, and with this I'm going to paint the hat, the shoulder pads, and the piece on the back of Elucia Vhane. This time I'm going to go for a very silvery, brassy kind of gold on this model to make it different from the gold on the skirt. And I'm going to start with Balthasar Gold and try to pick those areas that I want to be this color. Also, you can pick the places on the rapier and on the boots that you want to be this kind of a brassy color. Once that's done, I'm going to move ahead and paint the gold on the skirt with Retributor armor, and this is a much yellower gold, and this is going to make a huge difference. It's going to look like a royal kind of gold instead of the brassy look that we're going to go over the other places. And this is just on the very edge of this skirt and the details that adorn it. Next, I'm going to use Sandri Dust, and with this color I'm going to paint the piece of parchment that she's carrying around on her back. That parchment also has a purity seal, like a wax seal, that is painted Mephiston red as well, and it's highlighted the same way as we're going to do in the future steps. Next, I'm going to color the feathers on the top of the hat with Skarsnik green, and with this color just paint the whole entire thing very carefully, shake it well, thin it down. And also, what I forgot to mention when I was doing the details on the corset with gold, you definitely need a small layer brush and have a brace your hands together very well so you paint those colors. You can go back with the Screamer Pink and clean up if you make any mistakes. But pretty much you just have to be patient and use the very tip of your brush to paint those areas very carefully. Once it's done, we're finished with all of the base coating. The model looks great. I'm going to start washing with Agrax Earthshade. I'm going to use a small detail brush, and I'm going to mainly paint the recesses of the areas that I want to shade. I don't want to do a lot of cleanup, and I don't want to apply a ton of this wash and make it all dirty. I'm going to try and just paint the recesses on the skirt, on the details on the corset. I'm going to try to just cover the gold areas and things like that. And over the brass, you can cover the entire brass if you want. And over the leather, you can cover it all if you want. It's going to make it look darker, and it's not going to make a huge difference, but it's going to kind of shade the recesses and make them darker. Once that's done, I'm going to use Reikland Fleshtone, and with this color I'm going to shade the skin. Just make sure to shake these washes well before you apply them, and any other paint that you're using, it tends to separate. So make sure to shake well all of the paints that you use before using them. Also, for the skin, I'm just going to cover the whole entire thing. I don't care if it goes over all of the skin, because I'm going to go back and clean it up. Next, I'm going to use Nuln oil, and with this color I'm going to shade all of the silver details around the model, as well as shake this wash well again, like all of the other paints. And this is just sparingly around the model. There's very few details that are really silver, and I'm going to paint this color. You can use Agrax Earthshade if you want to go for a more dirtier look, but I want it to look cleaner and have dark recesses and not brown recesses, so I used the Nuln oil instead of Agrax Earthshade. Next, I'm going to use Drakenhof Nightshade, and this is going to go over the white, and this is going to give it those very bluish recesses on the white that look very good. And I'm going to try to just stick to painting pretty much the whole thing, but I'm going to spread the wash around so it concentrates on the recesses and not on the open areas. There's a lot of folds and stuff like that, so it looks good when you paint it all over, but try not to leave a lot of it on very open places, because we have to highlight it with white colors, and it's not going to be easier to paint over a huge blob of blue shade. Once that's done, I'm going to use Athonian Camo Shade, and with this color I'm going to color in the feather. Just wash the whole entire thing and let the wash define all of the features of the feather on the top and back, and that's it. And the last step, I'm going to use Drakenhof Nightshade again, and I'm going to just shade the very top of those feathers, just to give them a slightly bluer tinge and a lot darker green, so that it goes from light green to dark green on the very top. And just use it, feather it out towards the lighter green. Just try to use a little bit of this on the very top, and that's all. Once it's done, you can use the model like this. This is a good tabletop standard that you can use and have it painted. But I'm going to highlight it, all of these colors at least once. I'm going to start with the skin with Cadian fleshtone. And with this, I'm just going to pick all of the areas that are sticking out, that are not the recess. I'm going to ignore the recesses and just paint all of the skin again with this color. Be very careful and use a small layer brush and just paint these areas very carefully not to get into the recesses. Next, I'm going to use Ulthuan Gray, and with this color I'm going to color in all of the white places of this model. I'm going to try to avoid the recesses that are with the bluish wash, and I'm going to try to paint most of the other areas with this color. Again, thin this color down and use 2 or 3 coats depending on how many you see fit. I think I did 3 coats, 3 thin coats, and apply one, let it dry, and come back and apply it again until you reach the full opacity. And that way you can leave the very dark recesses and it looks very good. After you're done with that, you can use white scar, or as I did, Vallejo model color white. And with this color is just an edge highlight on the very sharpest edges of the white, just to give it that extra pop, and it's going to define it as looking very white. And that's it. So I was only going to make one highlight for the skin, but I decided to make a second one with Kislev flesh on just the fingers, because there's not a lot of skin exposed on this character, and there's not a lot of edges. You really don't need to highlight that much, just on the fingers. If you have any other area that you would like to highlight, you can use Kislev flesh as well, but I kind of like it like this without many highlights, and that's all I'm going to do for the skin. For the red, there's not a lot of details to catch, there's only a couple. I'm going to use Wild Rider Red, and this I'm going to just catch on the folds on the front of the skirt, and any other places there aren't any, just the Purity Seal wax, and that's pretty much it. There's not a lot to highlight on these areas. There's quite a lot more to highlight on the corset and all of the areas that are painted with Screamer Pink. I'm going to use Pink Horror to pick those edges with a small layer brush and just do like an edge highlight and catch those edges very well. In between the details with the gold and stuff like that, you don't really need to catch any edge highlights, only on the raised folds on the outside that are decorating the outside of the corset. Next, I'm going to highlight the black with Eshin Gray, and this is a little bit trickier. I'm going to just try to paint this over all of the sharpest edges, or the defined edges that define the shape of the boot, but also you want to paint a little bit of this color thin down over the places that reflect the most light. Like if there's a protuberance on the boot in a certain way that you see that catches light, you can apply a little bit of this color, and not too much, just to accentuate those areas and make the black stand out a little bit more. I'm going to continue this highlight by using Dawnstone, and with this color I'm going to paint the same areas just in a smaller area and only on the places that catches the most light or that are the sharpest. And with that, I'm just going to try to do the smallest highlight that I can. This is going to give an extreme highlight that looks very good on black. I'm going to just try to pick those very pointy parts and those places that catch the most light. Once that's done, I'm going to use Ushabti Bone, and with this color I'm going to edge highlight just the scroll on the back of Elucia Vhane. This is a very straightforward step. the same as when you highlighted the cloth or any other thing. Just an edge highlight on those sharpest edges to make it stand out. For the browns, I'm just going to give them just one highlight with Gorthor brown. Just make sure to thin down this color very well and use very thin brush marks. And try to just apply it on the sharpest edges of the brown parts that you want to highlight. And be very careful and just paint those edges as thin as you can. Next, the feathers on the top of the hat, I'm going to highlight them with Nurgling green. This is an edge highlight. This is going to go over all of the edges of the feather, and you can do any effects that you like using like lines to define those hairs of the feather. And it's going to go over both the dark and the light, and this is going to blend them together and make them look like a transition, and it's going to look more natural and not as harsh as we did with just the wash. Next, I'm going to highlight the brass with Runelord brass. This is a very silvery brass color that I like a lot, and this is going to go over most of the area of the brass that we're going to paint with this color. And mostly on the hat, we're going to paint most of the surface on the top of the hat and on the bottom, and all of the edges on the shoulder pads and stuff like that. Any recesses you can leave on the previous color so that it gives a rich reddish shadow, and that's going to look very good. But on most of the details, try to paint all of the edges with Runelord brass, and it's going to look very good. For the yellowish gold details, I'm going to use Liberator gold, and I'm going to do the same process. Just try to apply this on all of the sharpest edges as an edge highlight, and just try to pick all of those areas very carefully, not to paint on the red. And that's it. Next, to tie these metallics together, I'm going to use Stormhost silver. And with this color, I'm going to apply it all over the miniature on all of the silver areas, on silver, gold, and the brass as well. I'm going to just do a small edge highlights on the brightest places of the gold and brass, and on all of the edges of the silver. And this is going to like tie them together and make them look a lot shinier and very clean and pristine and nice. And this is the finished model. I had a lot of fun painting Elucia Vhane. This is a very nice detailed model that looks very good in my opinion, and this is a very nice high quality standard that you can paint this model at if you like. You can drop any number of highlights or colors that you want. If you don't want to go as far as I did, you can just base coat it and wash it. That's going to look pretty cool and perfectly fine for tabletop. And if you want to go all over the way, I would recommend that this character really deserves it. It looks pretty cool. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it entertaining and helpful. And if you did, please like the video, comment on it, and subscribe to the channel to see more videos. Click on that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads. And if you want, you can become a patron as well. That's going to help me out on my channel. Any comments, questions, or suggestions are well received on the comments below, and you can follow the links to my Facebook page or follow the link to Leadbelcher's unification group. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you on the next video. You stayed. Great. Thank you very much for supporting my channel, and if you would like to become a patron, there is a link to my Patreon page in the description below. Your contributions help pay for my work and keeps the channel going. A single $1 a month is more than enough, and you can cancel at any time. If you can't, don't worry, you can support my channel by simply watching my videos and sharing them with your friends. Thank you for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.